There we are. We're recording. That was creepy. Okay. Well, welcome to the Cedar Log. Where's Kyle? Where's Griffin? Where's Griffin? Hello.
I think he's in Philmont. Hello.
Oh wait, he is at Philmont. That's right.
Yeah,
And Kyle is riding ATVs at Resica, and
that's
he's teaching
cool.
people how to do ATVs. He's not just riding around.
I mean, who knows with him? But anyway, hi, I'm Luke Clancy,
Hi, I'm Rhys Wallace.
and I guess this is the Cedar Log.
This is the Cedar Log. So I guess to begin, so things have changed. We're not really the host per se. I'm technically an adult advisor now.
I'm just
Um,
the guy who makes the ads, and I edit the videos. That's about it.
and I just bug Kyle. I'm like the day-to-day advisor, but Kyle needed some time because he's working on some stuff with the comms and Matt Luke. So he kind of said,
Yeah.
"Hey, buy me time." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, we're going to do that now." So yeah, here we are.
Yeah. And as many of y'all know, the podcast debuted just about a year ago. I think it was June 4th was our first date that we sent out an episode. June
Sounds
4th or
about
3rd.
right. Yeah, so we're a little overdue on quite the anniversary, but I think it fell on staff weekend. And I don't know about you, but I was not feeling well. I had my second COVID shot. Oh my goodness, I was ill. Kyle was busy, everybody was busy. So it's the anniversary, kind of, sort of.
Anniversary month. We just enjoyed the whole month.
There we go. I like it. Anniversary month. So it's been a year of us doing Cedar Log, which is interesting. So we thought we'd talk about, I guess, who we are, because some of you might be listening because I look at the stats and some of you are from other states and other countries, and I'm like, who are these people? You probably don't know who we are. And then if you're in Pennsylvania, you pretty much know who we are. You don't really need an intro. So I don't know, skip that part. But I guess we'll start with Luke.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Luke Clancy, visual honor member with Unami Lodge. People like to know the name, so it's Nakuel Daman, which means to be of intention. I kept my vigil at Resco Falls and currently LLD chair. I've been LLD chair for a few years. And about personal life, I am going into my junior year of college, and I'm actually just switched over to studying human resource management. So it's all cool. Reese?
Very nice, very nice. Oh, what year did you keep your vigil?
Oh, I kept it 2020, so right in the middle of COVID.
I mean,
Thank you.
that's still a good time. I still apologize for not making it out to that one. Hopefully you got my letter.
Oh yes, it
Very
very
good.
thoughtful.
Very good. I was kind of worried you didn't get my letter for a hot second. 'Cause I was like, oh, is Larry actually gonna print this? I know Larry listens. That's why I say that.
Oh,
So
we love Larry.
everybody loves Larry. Anywho, but so I'm Rhys Wallace. It's been interesting the past few months for me. I graduated from Millersville. I hold a teaching license, which is insane to me, in social studies for high school, so secondary ed. I now actually work for the council. I'm a membership specialist, which is also insane to me because I kind of always thought, hey, that'd be cool to do. And now I'm doing it and I'm kind of learning a whole different side of scouting, which is just honestly fascinating. It's a lot, but it's fascinating. So it's been a pretty good experience so far. In the past, also Vigil Honor member. You can probably hear the lightning out in Pottstown. It is raining cats and dogs. Anywho, 2017 Vigil. What's my name? That's what it is. Machiskin Hitkutit. I might be saying that wrong. It means outspoken sapling. It's because I'm a loud, skinny guy, I guess. Also, there's 4 of us in my Vigil class, so all of our names relate to one of the Lenape creation stories. Since reading this lovely book on Lenape mythology and folktales, there are many creation stories that have slightly different versions. So ours is the one with the muskrat and the tree and the turtle and then the bear constellation in the sky, and then people come from the tree instead of like Natamigao coming down from the sky world and giving birth to like good and evil essentially. So our story that our names are based on are slightly different, but that's oral traditions. In the past, I was the ordeal chair for a few years. I don't even know, 3, 4, 2018 conclave chair. And then from ordeal to history. So that kind of ties into, I guess,
The
how
committee
we, the
as a whole.
committee, how we,
Yeah, how we all started. Which people always ask, especially other lodges, how did we make a history committee? Why did we make a history committee? And it's actually pretty funny story. So a few people in our lodge, I'll just name drop like Michael Kaliagis, Aiden Campbell, Luke Syak, myself, and then we had adults, Steve Mock, who's now camp director of Resica, Matt Gunnerman, and sometimes Matthew McGovern, would help us, rewrite the rules and procedures. And one meeting, I just kind of like splatted out, do we have like old records somewhere to see? 'Cause I was wondering about my grandfather. He was in Scouts, never made Eagle, but wanted to see if he was involved in the OA. He was from the Philadelphia area, and they kind of just looked at me like, if it is, it's broken and lost somewhere. And I thought it was a shame that we just, with us being the founding committee, that we just lose our history like that, like just boom, gone. So I kind of helped put together the committee. We talk about it's now helping out the memorabilia show and scanning documents. As Rhys being the first chairman, he scanned thousands of documents, photo slides. You can talk more about that, Rhys.
yeah. So the committee was being started because we were refining rules and procedures, which had to be done, and those guys did pretty well actually doing all of that. Like a lot of language changed and like functionality stuff that made us more effective. And then I was still doing ordeal, and I don't know if you asked me or I heard it was starting, and I asked to be placed as the chair. I forget who the chief was. Oh, it was Aiden.
Aiden,
Yeah,
yeah,
Aiden. And he was just like, all right, man. Now, I had already kind of gotten into the scouting history because of camp staff. So I've worked muster for 6 summers. So I kind of got into heart history, especially. And then that turned into Delmont. And that kind of led me to become good friends with my comfort because he's kind of one of our resident historians. So he became a mentor. I literally have his books next to me at my desk. Started with that. And then from there, Phil Hittner, I was introduced to him. So Dennis introduced us, and just kind of the three of us became the committee. And at first, it was just lodge history, um, which kind of made me sad because I was like, well, there's so much camp history. Also, like lodge history, in my opinion, there's only so much you can do. And I was kind of like, well, I want to do lots of things. And if I'm already kind of doing camp staff, like his history and whatnot, I should do all of it. So then they changed it to be all of it, which has been intense, but it's great. Um,
it's great.
and people always ask me if I started it, and I'm always like, nah, that was Luke. Every single time, they're just like, oh, you're the first chair. You were the first chair. And I was like, yeah, but Luke started it.
Yeah,
So I give credit where credit's due.
which I mean, my idea for the history committee was just like look at the old books and learn them. Rhys, you took it 10 times more, and like I'm so happy you were the first chair because we're an actual committee who has a social media. Shout out to our Facebook and Instagram, you should follow. And we now kind of have this podcast, which
Yeah.
was
So
cool to start.
yeah, exactly. And I like you were talking about the committee and I guess like how it changed. So the lodge didn't really have expectations. Like they had like ad hoc stuff when we wrote like our 100th anniversary book, which phenomenal thing. So anyone who helped with that, that's an extensive laundry list. Just that was phenomenal. But kind of like you were saying, Luke, we didn't really have a systematic way of collecting and preserving our history. So it was me and Mike Comfort and Phil Hittner. And What really helped me, because I kind of wanted to do things, was at the same time. So it was 2019. That sounds about right. Was this historian summit at Philmont Training Center, so the lodge, and then some other folks like pulling strings, like basically like getting money so I could go. Um, I flew out there. I never really travel outside the state, so the fact that I was going to New Mexico and I learned a bunch of stuff there, and part of that was oral history. It was more systematic ways because apparently National had like guidelines and like suggestions on hey how to do a history committee. So they just gave me a bunch of resources and kind of lit a fire underneath my butt, and I kind of just ran with it, and it just became everything. So we kind of started with nothing really. So it started with just people helping, and this is where I call it the friends of the committee or just people who are unspoken. Like Larry Niebauer created a server, so we have like a backup server to our Google Team Drive, which the Team Drive stuff is thanks to the communications. Like the fact that we have lodge emails and all that stuff is because of the communications team. And then we had Larry Niebauer, who helped out. And then Phil and Mike are opposites. So they specialize in like Mike Comfort is Delmont Lodge history and just Valley Forge. And Phil is Unami and Philadelphia. So it's just this perfect marriage of they know people, they find stuff, they have things in their own collection. Like Comfort's vigil name is literally the collector. The man's house is a museum. Like he just found early photos of Delmont, like the before Delmont was Delmont, like the islands we used or whatever, that were just on a floppy disk that he had. So like he just has things, and it just takes time to scan. So it's been nice to involve both of them because now they have a place for their stuff, and they also have a place for all of their friends as they talk to them. They get maps, they get photos, they get documents, they get memorabilia. It's been great. Um, but the photo slides, those came from council office. That story. I had nothing to do over COVID summer, so I scanned between working at McDonald's and scanning those. It took me like 2.5 weeks, and I scanned, I want to say 3,000 photo slides. Now, probably 500 were dupes, but they were all disorganized, and I couldn't tell after a certain amount of time. That's another story. So probably like 2,500 unique photos from ranging from probably the 40s, the 30s to 70s, 80s. So it's been fun.
Yeah,
I guess
which which I mean, like you've talked about like Comfort a lot. Like you guys bonded over everything with Delmont and Musser and all, but like even myself and Phil Hittner, he was actually my Eagle Scout coach for a long time, and made Eagle with him. And when I found out he was a lodge chief, like that was he's 1974, I believe, was the year he was lodge chief. And I was a little taken aback. I was like, "You were lodge chief? That's so cool!" Like, oh, one of my close friend Aiden is now a past lodge chief. And I still, never gonna tell him this. If he watches this, you didn't hear it. But like, I kind of look up to him. It's like, wow, you actually like ran the lodge. That's started this order that brought so many people, not even nationally but internationally, together for thousands of events across the year, across the nation. So like I don't know, kind of just look up to them, and even like Phil Hittner knows this. When I achieved Eagle, he actually gave me a Eagles or a Boy Scout booklet from I believe it was 74, like one of the 70s booklet. You check your ranks and all that. It was some kid from his old troop that the kid just threw it out, and he said, I want to save this for history." And I liked history, so I have that. And another touching thing he gave to me was the felt patches of the turtles with the W's on it. With actually, it was the remakes they did back in the '70s. So I'll have to show that to you if you don't have any, Rhys. Uh, so it's just Mr. Hittner, or Phil, I should say, because he will yell at me if I say Mr. Hittner. uh, really bonded over just Ruska and mainly Unami history because I just love that how it started and everything we've done.
exactly. And that's kind of just been the theme of the committee is that we had the people like on the committee, and then just the friends of the committee, like Dr. Sirkin and Mark Chaludi are great folks too, because they provide info, they show me things. Like Doc Sirkin one weekend like brought his collection, his paper collection, and like filled 2 or 3 tables, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's been one of those lucky things of people say it's been me when I was the youth, and now, Kyle, or it's like the committee, but I always try and say no, it's that the fact that people have kept things and they're willing to share stories, or they're willing to bring these items or loan them to us so we can scan them. Like the polices, I love the police family. From grandma to grandson, the Mr. Police in the middle, everyone has like their grandmother has given me stuff and info. I got photos of Heart from like the early days from them. Just stuff that you wouldn't find unless you looked in your family's closet, and they did. And the fact that they're willing to share it, it's just awesome. Love the polices. And I think that's where it comes from. It's just we've been lucky that pretty much every time we say we want to do another thing, like the social medias, we've always been met with people giving us photos to put in the archives and also to share and post. And then those posts cause people to give us more, or they're like engaged. And it's just this snowballing thing that we can do more. And then COVID hit, and we couldn't do our pop-up displays and collect things like we normally did. So once again, it was Luke. If you want to tell that story, Luke.
Yeah, so once again, Reese being the history chair and me, I listened to, at that point, once when COVID hit, I probably listened to like 15 podcasts a day just because, what else did I have to do? I really didn't have school. I really didn't have a job lined up yet. So I was like, you know what? It'd be cool to have like a podcast, something like a crash course, just to, like tell the history. We share photos, we do everything. And so one morning, I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, everyone was up at 2 a.m. last year. I just texted Reese, hey, let's do a podcast. And I think it was like 20 minutes later, he texted back, sure. And so that's just how it rolled. We had many meetings one on one through text or through Zoom just to talk about, what's the name of it, how are we going to record it, and like what can we talk about? Like what history do we have that we can truly talk about? And Reese, being the historian he is, came up with the Cedar Log, which many of you don't know is the newspaper or like the uh, daily pamphlet that scouts would get at Delmont back in the 40s. And that's the symbol we see for the history committee and for the Cedar Log is actually a traced image of that I did in Photoshop one night. And yeah, that's a little history of the name. Uh, but yeah.
Yes, we were kind of like on the same wavelength. Like I was also getting in the podcast, specifically Dive Studio. If you like Korean things or like Korean culture or music, you will know Dive Studios, and that's kind of like they started during the pandemic, and then they've grown to like they literally have people in like dozens upon dozens of countries listening to their stuff, and they have content in like Korean and English, and it's just fascinating to watch. I study as a teacher to be a teacher, but content creation or just like production, I guess is the word, has always fascinated me. Like how do people organize themselves to make this like seamless product and make it look easy? So that was part of the curveball that Luke was saying, because we just sat there on Zoom for hours trying to figure out like what are we talking about? What should our content schedule look like? What order should we go in? What are our technical abilities? Can we convince the LEC to give us things? Like we started out with like nothing, like using iMovie,
Mm-hmm.
just GarageBand and Zoom, which I have my university account, which I no longer have, but that's fine. It just
And
started as
no
that.
microphones.
No microphones, nothing. And we had to like convince people that we were going to do this, which there wasn't much convincing, but you gotta come with a plan, right? You can't just say,
Yeah.
hey. And then this Cedar Log was a newspaper at Delmont. There's also the Delmont Rag, which I had like a blog where I just kind of wrote about scouting stories when I was in college just to improve my writing. So that's kind of how that started because I already used the name Delmont Rag. So I was kind of like, well, I don't want people to find those by accident. It's still there. Don't look at, I mean, you can look at it if you want. It's just I wrote it when I was like a sophomore, freshman, some junior year. So like my writing is drastically better now. So Cedar Log. And then interesting enough, my Comfort had 4 scanned copies from, I think you're right. It might have been the 30s or 40s. And then we looked at all the like cover, like they had like little drawings, with the old newspapers. So we looked at those, and the one was like a kid diving, and another one was I remember the kid diving, and it was just so weird because it was just like the trousers and the legs. I was kind of
Yeah.
like, that doesn't make sense. And then there was some other image, and then we saw like the scout cooking over a fire that just looked so distinct. And then Luke was nice enough to draw over it, like trace it and do
Yeah.
all that. And that was a process, like will this name work? So we asked some folks, and then it's like, all right, cover art. And then I figured out Anchor, how we can distribute it to everything. And it took some time because it took like a little bit for that to sync between
Yeah.
different platforms. So, at first we weren't on Apple Podcasts for like a little bit, and then we were. So it was a process, but it was fun. It was like, all right, we're doing it.
Yeah. Which even like, the name of the podcast, I know uh what I kind of wanted that I favorite. I love the name of the Cedar Log now just because it's been a year and I've just fallen in love with it. But another name that I was kind of pushed for, if you remember, was like the Newingi or the Spirit of Newingi because that was the name of when we
Mhm.
did Conclave. That was that newspaper, and if you guys don't know, Newingi is the name is Ian Goodman's middle name, which I think it means the spirit. So, or no, the founder, something like that.
I
I
think
may be
it's
wrong.
I think it's the willing one.
I'm totally off then.
I don't quote me because I might be a historical index, but sometimes even I have to like fresh my mind because there's too many things going on in this head. Um, but yeah, there was other names, and like we talked about it. Like we emailed the advisors, we emailed John Fickle, like we emailed we asked John, like, hey, are we allowed to do this? Because he's the staff advisor for the lodge. So it took some time just figuring it out. And the first series we did was Heart, just because I knew Heart history pretty well and I felt
Yeah,
comfortable. And then we were lucky where once we figured out a script and like how it should sound and what would the intro and outro be and like what length we wanted, it was so much easier to then adjust things or to like not, I guess, copy paste, but that sounds
yeah.
negative. But like
It's
for
copy and paste.
yeah, I mean the Heart stuff started like, so we all the histories we've done are based on publications. Like I kind of take out the biggest things or the most interesting things, maybe add some stuff that I just personally know and just like kind of weave it together. So like the idea is that originally, especially for me, is like I'm all about accessibility. Not everyone is going to sit down and read a history book, and that's fine. And also like for some younger folks, history books are probably written at like at least a high school adult level to be like realistic. So, for a younger scout who's interested, I don't want them to be discouraged by a book. I mean, at some point they will read it, but there should be an entry level thing, or even like Cub Scouts. Like I've taken Cub Scouts on history hikes around Hart. You know what I'm saying? So like audio, it just seems less intimidating to folks. So it's just taking publications. So like with permission, my comfort graciously allowed me to go through this book, kind of pick out different details and like weave episodes per se together, like the main things you should know about Delmont. But there's still more. So if you find this book, you should buy it. Um, so that's kind of how it started. And then, it became easier and easier because there's plenty of publications written by Mike Comfort, or there's, the Lodge history book that the Unami series has been done based on. So there's just been enough publications or just written histories, even on web pages and stuff, for us to have that, then have our sources to then, incorporate. So it's like a
And
Frankenstein of prior things and some new stuff that we've learned.
yeah, and just to fix, actually, I had to look it up. Goodman's name is Nuingi, which means the willing.
Okay,
So the willing.
good to
There we
know.
know.
So
uh, yeah.
that's kind of how that started. And then it was just audio. And we kind of looked at the numbers and we're like, should probably be a video version. And that's how that started. So Luke did like the anchor stuff, like uploading the episodes and editing. And then I would just go through, because I just know the archives, digital ones, really well because I made them. I would pull photos and, make up just generic background video to play it on and put on the Lodge YouTube, which the LAC was pretty happy because they're like, hey, there's stuff on it. Um, and then people started to watch it on both YouTube and the audio. Also, YouTube seems like pretty easy for older folks. Like Larry Niebauer suggested that because he was like, my dad, who's like, however old his dad is, knows YouTube. So if you get it on YouTube, like the amount of more people you can reach. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then we still put them on Instagram just in case someone watches them there. Facebook, not so much. We did for a little bit, but how Facebook counts a view is very weird. Like it said 175 people watched one of the Delmon episodes, and I was like, does the 3-second preview you do count as a view? Because if so, that shouldn't be a view. Um, I don't understand Facebook fully.
Does anyone?
I don't think so. That's a Zuckerberg. Nobody understands. But yeah, YouTube. And then it just kind of kept evolving from there as we covered more topics. And then I really wanted to do oral history because of the historian summit. I was like, I really wanted to do that because it's just so personable. Everybody likes stories. And it's one of those things, not to be morbid, but once someone dies, that's gone. If someone, passes away, unfortunately, the stuff they collected, if, whoever's left knows who to give it to, like that can be preserved. And that's a big thing too. And it makes me sad sometimes when we get things, because sometimes it is because people are getting older, or unfortunately someone has passed, like Don Ross when he recently passed. It was kind of like, oh no, we lost you. um, and now we have stuff, or like the council got a bunch of stuff, which is nice, but you kind of almost have to have like a very reverent feeling of like, all right, we're taking care of your stuff, we're like kind of keeping you alive through that.
Mm-hmm.
So then started with oral histories just because I was researching things for future publications that y'all will see at some point. And then just to collect stories in general because everybody loves stories. Um, so it kind of just kept evolving from there.
Yeah, and I mean, just to have little teasers for future episodes. We've at Conclave this year, NE5 Conclave, we interviewed some special guests. I'll say, not to spoil the surprise, but we were able to meet up at Goose Pond for Conclave, and we're able to meet up and have a full video interview with special guests at that Conclave, and it should be out in a few weeks. They'll be coming out very shortly. So,
No, that's a
uh,
good segue because that's been like the insane thing of like how we started with pretty much nothing, and then we passed it on to Kyle and Griffin because I became the advisor, and then you're almost
I,
there.
yeah, I actually have a year. So this time next year for second anniversary, I'll be fresh adult. Yesterday was my birthday. Not to say anything.
Yeah, I wish you a happy birthday twice.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, when I see it on either like Facebook and Snapchat, I'm like, I have to send it just because I'll
Yeah.
forget otherwise. But Yeah, it's been interesting watching Griffin and Kyle because they've definitely made it their own, and they've given suggestions of like, oh, we could change the outro or we could change the intro, and that's been the fun thing is that
Hmm.
Luke will suggest things and everyone's just like, yeah, let's try it, and then it's better. Like the intro music now, it's like, oh yeah, like I wouldn't have thought of it,
Yeah,
or
and that was all because of a podcast I listened to. They changed it up to have more of that like flow feeling into it, and it just made me think of like a radio show where in between the two songs, where it'd be like, "Hi, this is Luke Clancy. This is W104, and this is blues," and then go into the next song. Kind of thought it'd be a cool like transition of just they're the ones leading us in this podcast, so they get their own little feel instead of just hi I'm this, and then having the beeps, which no one knew stood for the Cedar Log. No one ever picked up
yeah.
on that.
I've only had one person ask me what that was, and I was like, it's literally Morse code for the Cedar log. And that's just because scouts learned Morse code at around that time at the Cedar log. The paper was a thing. And that paper, like they would make hundreds of these a week. Like this was a major thing when Delmont was hopping back in the day. And then you mentioned the radio show. Like part of the inspiration too is Ben Franklin's World. This is great early American history podcast with Liz Covart. You should listen to it. It's wonderful. She covers like everything early American history, like Revolution, before that, after that. It's great. Anywho, so it's been fun watching Kyle and Griffin because they just kind of have their own way of doing things or like their own dynamic, and it's interesting to see them improve. As the advisor has been like my immediate gratification is I see them improve. Kyle's taking ownership of this stuff, and now Kyle's doing interviews, right? Which is always something I wanted to do. I just didn't have the time before I aged out as a like adult with the OA. And now Kyle, he interviewed Aiden Campbell and kind of tortured him with some different hot sauces, like like a knockoff Hot Ones, if you've ever watched that on YouTube. So it's just like interesting to see how things have stayed the same with us in the background and then also changed with, new youth like at the helm. So that's been
Yeah,
fun.
which not to say, but like they've done great. Like I mess with them all the time because I just edit the audio, and they how people say, oh, you shouldn't edit podcasts. People should see the raw audio we get sometimes for the podcast because just the mishaps. I wish there was a bit of a more public speaking esque, just to teach them how to read a script for the history. But that's neither here or there. They've improved immensely since then. You can go back and see in the actual like physical audio copies, we'd go from like 300 edits an episode with them to now we're only down to like 50 edits an episode with them. So like yeah, there's room for improvement still, but it makes my job fun because I can listen to the mess ups and giggle a little.
And that's like the fun thing about being an advisor is that it's supposed to be a place for the youth to learn and grow as they're producing something. So it's a double good. Folks are learning a skill while doing it, right? And they're getting confidence, I think, too, while also creating a product that other people will listen to. And then the best part is like people in the lodge will give feedback. It's a very like open thing. It's not like, oh, we're not going to listen to you. Like, no, if you have an idea, like just say it.
Yeah,
And like,
just because it's the history committee making it doesn't mean it's the history committee's podcast. Like anyone anywhere, Unami or just the scouting world has an idea or wants to come talk about something with us and have it put out there, reach out, history@unamilodge.org, and we'll talk and we'll get something out there for you. Like we're here not just for history, but for scouting in general. I like to say.
pretty much. And that's the cool thing with Kyle is that he extended it to section. And then, like, I mean, no, he hasn't teased it yet, but he's extended it in
I
ways
think
I
we
didn't.
kind of just did. So like, sorry, Kyle.
Whatever. He's extended it to levels I didn't think we'd get to. So it's been cool. Also, Yokofu has a podcast, El Sime. I only took high school Spanish. I do apologize. Um,
I've never taken Spanish, high school or college.
yeah, I gotta check out their podcast and just listen to it. I can recognize some things and I don't get the gist of it, so I gotta just sit
Yeah,
down and listen. So like that's cool too. Is like it's not just us; it's other folks. I think we're the only ones doing just history. Like there was a lodge down south at whatever lodge serves Camp Raven Knob. They had Peace Pipe Radio or whatever, and they did like a podcast series with their lodge chief and stuff. It was funny to listen to, but there's nothing that's been I've seen that's been this continuous, long running, and like there's still more to cover. I'd love to talk about Treasure Island, but I gotta like sit down with Kyle and say, how are we doing this? How do you want this done?
because there's just so much history with Treasure Island, like
Exactly.
from summer camp stuff to off season stuff, and just the emotional value Treasure Island holds for so many people. It's just
Well, there's still like Delmont 43 history too. Like there's still like so much. And I guess
yeah.
the tease later this summer, like from Dr. Sirkin, which I have a habit of saying Doc Sirkin. I don't know which one's more polite. But
I mean, some people just call him Doc. So
okay, well Doc Sirkin. That's how I that's how I affectionately refer to him. So Doc Sirkin gave us these audio tapes that I had to like sort through when I was the youth chair and figure out what went with what because it was kind of like scrambled everywhere, which is fine. And there's some audio from E. Herner Goodman from like throughout the years that he was alive, like literally from like middle, maybe like early-ish, and to like end like year before, like probably his last NOAC speech before he died in like 80. So
yeah,
that's gonna be a thing. So look forward to that at some point in this summer. And that's like the fun thing is like there's just so many opportunities. So like we're doing like camp history, then we're doing interviews, which that was a lot of fun, interviewing camp staff folk for Resica because Resica's 65th is next year. Yeah, that sounds right.
yeah,
So talking to folks to like get ready for that, just like get a sense of Resica history was a lot of fun. And then there's things that haven't been released, but like I'm working on other histories. Like since I was the youth chair, now it's continuing like a history on Catholic scouting, for example. So I talked to a few Catholic scouters, and there's that audio. And then there's just conversations I've had with people that I was like, "Hey, can I record this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So
yeah,
it's been fun.
yeah. It's definitely been a crazy year with just the podcast in general, but like worldly crazy year. Definitely enjoyed myself because I never thought I could ever say that I would be on a podcast, you know, doing something I enjoy. So thank you, and thank you all for listening to the podcast for a year. Like it's been a good ride so far, and I hope to see it just keep expanding and hopefully outgrow me once when I get out of youthhood and be an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you have suggestions or there's certain topics you want covered, just let us know because we have like a rough plan in our heads. Oh goodness, I almost said in our ideas in our heads. But if you have an idea, let us know. Maybe there's things we just haven't thought of. I know we're gonna do Briar training area at some point. We're gonna do TI at some point. We're gonna do Delmont 43 history, and then
I know Firestone. We want to do that at some point,
yeah, that would probably be
but
like a quicker one. But yeah, definitely
yeah.
want to do that. There's
Which
gonna
I'll put
be
this out there for anyone who may have connections, especially in the Detroit area. But Roger Firestone's niece, who is the namesake for Firestone Camp, Roger Firestone's niece is the owner of the Detroit Lions. So if you have a contact with the Detroit Lions, we'd love to talk to Miss Ford, uh, and we'd love to see if she has any family history that we could talk about and see what she has because that'd be pretty cool.
yeah, the Firestones, like that entire history and just that family has been very key to our council history. They've been very good to us. I'm trying to think what else we wanted to cover. Just more oral history. Seems like Kyle wants to do more of that, more interviews
Yeah.
too. So it's kind of a lot, and it's every 2 weeks because we're a bunch of volunteers, and I do not get paid to do this specific thing. Other things,
You're
yes.
you're not a volunteer anymore per se.
In this hat right now, I am a volunteer. Everything I did today, that was part of work, and we like work because work has been fun. So, yeah. Suggestions. A way to support us, share it with your friends. You can watch
Share
it
it
on
with your family.
YouTube. You can listen to it on Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can listen to it on Amazon Podcasts. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts. Basically, almost anywhere you can find a podcast, you could probably find this. So stream it. Also, there's a link in our link tree, which is on both our social medias, I'm pretty sure, for the Lodge Square store. You should buy things from the Lodge because the more things you buy from the Lodge, the more I can't, but Kyle can convince the LAC to give us things because things like this microphone or honestly, like just the budget they give us every year, I think is pretty nice. Like they help pay for basic things, and they helped us grow, like getting archival gloves and storage, like some storage boxes. We need a lot more. That's another story. Um, Also, like comms has been nice because when they got their Adobe Suite, they also gave us access. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's definitely helped having the numbers and having folks supporting us, even if it's just by listening, because then the LAC sees it and they're like, oh, okay, let's keep doing this. And the LAC has been good to us, and they've been very good to Kyle, I think, too.
Yeah. Which, if you have, and I'm talking to everyone, if you have history of your own that you want to talk about and share, or if your grandfather, your father, even your mother at this point, or grandmother has anything to share about scouting history, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear the stories. We'd love to see what history you have, because at the end of the day, yeah, it's Miami Lodge History Committee, it's Cradle Liberty History Committee, but we want to learn about everything in scouting. As Rhys said, Catholic scouting and other religious scouting sects, like we want to see all of it and preserve all of it because history matters.
Yeah, exactly. Like we'll always have that core focus on everything with our council, but we're not going to say no. If you have a story and you were in the council even as like a kid and you moved away, yeah, tell us your experience. Tell us that story, or like it's your grandfather and now you live in Maine or something, and it was your granddad who lived down here. No, like tell us about that, or show us the items. Like that's the key thing. Is like we don't want to take your things. We can scan them, take photos. Those are just as good. Um, so yeah, you can keep that history while also helping us spread that history. Like one gentleman in Alaska, his dad had a photo album that he made of Delmont in like the 50s, and he gave me permission to copy it, and I just got to basically print that out and put it in a binder, and wham bam, I then have a replica, and I have the opportunity and honor, and the whole committee does, of sharing his father's memories to so many scouts, and I think that's incredible, and I think that's part of what keeps people alive, right? Like I don't think death is the end. If your memory is alive, I think in a way you're alive. So I think that's just the coolest thing too. Is like it almost feels like these people haven't left us; they're just not here.
Yeah, totally. Uh, well, I would say if you're okay with me ending it, Rhys, I think that's
I
all
think we're
for.
good. Just thank you everyone for
Thank
everything,
you.
be it the LEC or listeners or just anybody. So stay tuned for the rest of the summer. We have some good stuff. Well, Kyle, Kyle has some good stuff because he's the man in charge. He's my boss. He's Luke's boss. He's everybody's boss. So,
And just to end it, because I like to always say it, I'm Luke Clancy,
and I'm Reese Wallace.
and this is the Cedar Log.
Bye.